What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful evening today. Beautiful. Nice. Little horn going there, F flat. But, you know, it's nice. Have a bit of a very small breeze. It's about 0.2 miles per hour. 0.2 miles per hour. You barely feel it, but I feel it. Anyway, here we are. It's a Friday evening. The week has evaporated. And, you know, if this was the old days, I would be very excited right now that tomorrow, cartoons, cartoons, love them. I will mention, I don't know if I've mentioned this, I probably have many years now, but there was a show in those days, the Hudson brothers, Razzle, Dazzle, and anybody from that time would remember it. So I would get up early in the morning. Like I said in other videos, I was not a sleep-in person. I would get up regular time and I would flip on my Zenith black and white television set, give it about 30 seconds to a minute to warm up. And I remember Razzle Dazzle, they had this I don't know what it was like a milk truck, you know, those old-fashioned ones, and they would drive it around, you know, and then they would end up in some studio and they would roll out of it. Or I didn't realize back in those days, I thought it was out here in California, but now when I see, you know, some of it on YouTube, the opening scenes, it was in Toronto, or as they say it up there, Toronto. And it was like a comedy, a variety show. I loved watching it, though. It was one of my favorite things to do on a Saturday morning. But I remember that there was one scene where, remember Laverne and Shirley, they lived in the basement, and they had that little window, and you could see people walking by. Well, they had a scene like that where one of the Hudson brothers would show up at one of those windows and look in and talk. So I didn't know later on that Kate Hudson is like his daughter, or the Hudson brothers, and they were young back then. Now they're all, you know, what time does to you? Old. Now they're all old. But I want to tell them that I appreciated that show. I was a little kid back then, but I used to watch it, and I remember them. In my mind, they're still young. I mean, they had that younger brother. He was like the Osmond-looking one. He was. And I don't know what he's doing now, but yeah. There's about 4 dozen or so crows flying by. I don't know where they're going, but they have a rendezvous. So anyway, that was a great show. Hudson brothers. I know the whole thing with the daughter and the father, but that's life. Things like that happen, you know, where, you know, you have a falling out. So, yeah, it makes me nostalgic when I think of that show. It makes me feel like it's 1974. Anyway, speaking of 1974, so I started riding my bike early, you know, when I was little, like kindergarten kid. I taught myself. I had this red bike my father bought. I had the training wheels on. So I went in the basement. That guy's like got the truck there. Anyway, I went down the basement and I got some tools out one day. I got fed up with the training wheels. I didn't have them on that long, but I was just fed up. Took them off and I started trying in front of my house on the sidewalk. And eventually I said, oh, I just got that for a few feet. And then I built on that, and all of a sudden I was doing a whole block. And at the beginning, I remember, this is probably a common thing to me, maybe nobody else, but to me it was common. My eyes would fixate on a tree or on a fire hydrant, and I would crash into it. You know, I remember one time I was going like pretty fast, and there was a fire hydrant at the end of my street coming up to me, and I said, oh, that fire hydrant, I better avoid, and boom, I went into it. So that was my bike. It was a red one. I'm not a fan of red. For cars, it's nice, but you know, a bike, I wanted a black one. Anyway, time goes by like it usually does, and that summer, well, that's like a little plane from Fantasy Island. Anyway, that summer, we went to the Cape. You know what the Cape is? It's Cape Cod. And had my bike with me, and I rode that thing everywhere. I became so good, you know, that I was allowed to go anywhere I wanted at that age. Well, actually, it was not that, so that was 5 years old. So this is like, it would be like 2 years later. So now I'm 2 years of experience, right? And I'm all over the place. I'm up the hill, down the hill, at the beach, all over, all these side streets. And I loved, you know, there were like these cool little trails there. So at the street where we rented, there was a bulldozer, a big one, and it was there for like 3-4 days. And the road, like the main road was asphalt, but then that street that we were on, it was all sand. They hadn't made it yet. It was all sand. And it was hard to push your bike through that. So I said, all right, leave the bike behind the bulldozer, and I'm gonna go walk home. So I did that, and then my father was there, so I hung around, talked to him, and then, I don't know, a couple hours later, I got the craving to get on my bike and disappear into the darkness. I couldn't find my bike. I looked all over the property, and then the light bulb went off. And I said, oh yeah, that's right, I left it behind the bulldozer. I go to the street, I look up, and I see the bulldozer's gone, and I see something that appears to be like a big cardboard thing on the ground. And I was like, where's my bike? So I go over there, and I look, and that big cardboard thing that I thought was a cardboard, that was my bike, flat, because the bulldozer moved and ran it over. Right, so I was all bummed out. And I brought it back flat. My father saw it. He's like, what happened? I thought I was going to get mad. I said, why'd you leave it there? You know, and he goes, oh, we'll get another one. Now, I've said this in another video, but that other one, when he said that, I thought he meant, we're going right now, get in the station wagon, we're going to get a bike right now. And I was all excited. And then he goes, no, he goes, not now. Later. You know, and then when we got back home, I said to him, well, we gonna get that bike now or what? Because I already spotted the one I wanted, you know, I was like eyeballing it. And he goes, no, he goes, you're not gonna need it now. Fall time, winter, you don't need it now. He said springtime. So springtime did arrive eventually, and we went to that. And meantime, every time we'd go to this store, I would go and check out the bike where my parents shopped. Probably everybody would say, you know, that worked there, there's that kid again. There's that kid with that bike. So anyway, I would go, and then finally the day came. My father said, in the station wagon, we will go and get that bike. So we went up there, all excited, and my father's getting ready to pay. Guy says to him at the very last moment, he says, if you want, and I'm listening to this, and I know something's coming that I'm going to get annoyed by. The guy says, if you want, you can leave it here for $20. Our professional people in the back will put it together for you. And I didn't want to hear that. I was like, not even, like, I thought my father was gonna be like, no, I'm gonna do it right now at the basement of my house. So my father looked at me, he's like, let them do it. They know what they're doing. They'll do it right. You know, we're gonna be trial and error thing. So he convinced me, and I said, all right. That night, the longest night of my life, I was staring at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep from excitement. Finally the morning came, and we ended up going there, and the guy came out with my bike, nice and cool looking, and I was so excited. That bike fit me like a glove, with the right size. And my father put it on top of the station wagon, tied it down with a trucker's knot, and then we got home, pulls it off, puts it down, and I immediately get on it and I disappear into my neighborhood. And that's how it was for the next few years. That bike was part of me. Everywhere I went, that bike was there. It was like a puppy. So I had that bike for 9 years. 9 years, yeah. And then what happened was, I thought, you know, plus I jumped with that bike. So anyway, what happened was, one of my relatives so-called relatives, not really relatives, but they're close enough. So we'll give them that. They came over and they had just purchased a really high-end 10-speed bike, a really nice one. I don't know if it was Fuji but it was a really nice 10-speed. And I remember we went bike riding, and I was having a hard time keeping up. I couldn't keep up at all. I mean, that thing was like, phew. And I remember we were going down my hill, and I thought it was flying. You got to keep in mind, I had a chopper. I had an Apollo 5-speed, Ross Apollo, right? Those are not made for speed. They're not designed for speed. They're kind of heavy. And he was like barely pedaling, and he was flying by me. So I was like, yeah, this is not right. So I got to get one of these 10-speed bikes. I want to be fast like that. I don't want to be lagging behind, although you can't jump properly with a 10-speed. So anyway, back then, Huffy, which I was never a fan of Huffy, because they had these cheap, I don't know what those were, like mountain bike things, and I was not a fan of Huffy, you know. But anyway, it was like a cheap bike. I saw a commercial, they were like Huffy, 15-speed bike, new. And I said, oh, wait a minute, that's 15? That kid had a 10, I get this 15, I could blow him away. Anyway, so we go, finally I decided to get that 15-speed bike, and it was, you know, it looked nice, but it was cheap. All the parts were cheap. It didn't have good speed. It's not made for speed. It's made just for saying it's 15 speed. I thought because I had 15 speeds that it would be amazingly fast. But that bike that kid had was a quality 10 speed, and mine was a bargain basement 15 speed, so it was awful. So I got tired of it. I had it for, you know, a while before I got tired of it, and then I took my bike, the Apollo Ross 5-speed, and I made a Frankenstein bike. I took the handlebars off of that. I switched them out with a 10-speed, so I had the handlebars up here for the 10-speed frame. Everything I wanted, including the seat, I put on the 10-speed bike, and it just looked like a ridiculous Frankenstein bike. So I had that for, I don't know, a little bit, and then I took it and I put it in a dumpster. Like the Karate Kid when he got pissed off and he says, I hate this bike, and he threw it in the dumpster. That's what happened to me with that 15 speed. And then after that, never had a bike again. I mean, I have one now, I just don't ride it now. You know, now, you know, I don't ride it. But back then, you know, once my time with that 15 speed was over and that Ross bike was no longer functioning, I gave up bike riding, you know. So it's a long time ago, but yeah, prior to that though, I was on the bike all the time. But anyway, I always wanted a red line, you know, BMX. Always wanted that, but those were really expensive back then. My father would look at the price on those and go, take out a mortgage for that? I'm not buying that, so I never had one. But so I did the best I could with my bike, and I was a good jumper with that. You know, I was really good. I could jump everything in my neighborhood that was jumpable, I jumped over. But and I had a chain too, tie it up, make sure nobody would steal it. But yeah, I wanted a BMX Redline, but a really nice one. Yeah, but never happened. Those were good for jumping. My friend Mike, he had a BMX. His grandmother would get him anything. My friend would say, I want you know, an arcade game in my room. She'd get it for him. You know, she was always trying to please him. Very nice lady. Anyway, my bike was black, but you know, I mean, this is a Schwinn, but similar idea. See, the seat, I had one of these banana seats. I did not have a horn. I didn't have a horn. Unnecessary. I just yell, you know, get out of the way. But it was this style, similar. Right, look at that. And originally I did not have a shifter, right? But and I didn't have a bag in the back. I didn't have a bag. You know, everything else though pretty much matched, including the handlebars, kind of handlebars I had. So I had a regular 5-speed, and that's all you really need, 3 to 5 speeds. You don't need all the other, you know, up and down stuff. Just 3 to 5 is sufficient. I would say even 3 is perfect. But I had a 5, and I had that little stick thing in the front there, and I'd go up and down. So one day my bike, you know, I had to bring it to get it repaired from all the jumps. My spokes, kind of loose. So I brought it down there. They adjusted everything. Everything was like in mint condition. And just as I'm ready to leave, my father's getting ready with the money, I look in, they had like a counter there with glass. And I look inside, they had one of these shifters. See that? One of these shifters. And I said, I want one of those. And I thought my father was going to be like, what do you want that for? That's ridiculous. That's for a car. So he said to me, you want that? I go, I want that. He's like, tell him to put it on. So I went back to the guy. It was a short guy there with fluffy hair, like a Prel hair shampoo thing. And I said to him, can I put that on my bike? And he's like, sure. So I thought he was going to be like, yeah, come back in like, 5 days. I go, when should I come back for the bike? Because now I'm happy and sad because, I'm happy I'm getting this thing, the shifter, but I am sad because it's going to take more time to do. And he says to me, yeah, he goes, you wait right here, I'll do it right now. I go, oh, even better. So he pulled out his tools, boom, 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 not even 5 minutes. He had it in there, he adjusted the back gears, and then I got on it and I rode it home. And I'm shifting, five, back and forth, up and down. I loved it. I loved that shifter. It made me feel like I was driving a car. And then I went and bought, they had this tape that it was almost like, depending on how the light was hitting it, it would glitter different colors, shine different colors. So I had that on my bike. And I would pick up speed and hit the ramp, and ideally you want to land with the back tire and then slowly land on the front. You don't want to land like this and then fall over. That's not a good jump. A good jump is picking up, bunny hopping at the last second, and then going up like that in an angle, and then landing with the back tire, and then a quarter second later the front tire lands. So that's how I would jump 95% of the time. So I used to, with the seat in the back being a banana seat, it was always somebody who needed a ride somewhere that you had to be in good shape in those days. Always somebody wanted a ride. So you'd put them in the back, you'd start pedaling with them in the back. And then one day I was thinking, you know what? What about if I want two people? Where am I going to put them? So I thought, what about if my father had this friend who was a welder, friends for many, many years. And I thought, why don't I go to him and tell him to weld me two pieces that extend out from here, weld them onto the frame, and have them come out to here in a loop. And then put like a pillow on that thing, and then have a third person sit there. So it'd be me, second person, and then third person out here sitting on that thing. And then I would have something welded on here, on the frame down below, like right here, so they can put their feet on, so they're not dangling and hitting the ground, slowing me down. That never happened because I started thinking about it. I said, you know what? With all that weight, first of all, the back tire, that's a lot of weight. Forget about the pedaling. I felt like I could handle the pedaling. But I was thinking that with all that weight, the bike's going to be like this all the time. You wouldn't be able to get the tire down because, you're here beyond the wheel. So it would just be like, you'd be, like a unicycle. So I never did it. But now I see they have bikes that have that idea built in, but it's balanced, so you can put two people. So anyway, yeah, I didn't have a light either, but definitely did not have a horn. But yeah, look at that, it spins around. And I was always working on my bike, always doing something, always trying to improve something, always trying to lubricate something. I, would spend hours with the tools in the back of my bike upside down, adjusting things, and fixing the brakes, adjusting them so they didn't rub against the rim. And then I would take off. Nobody would be like, oh, where are you going? What's going on here? Where are you? You've been gone all day. No. And I liked it that way. I grew up that way. I didn't like that, nobody knew where I was. Nobody. I mean, when I say nobody, they couldn't find me if they wanted to. I remember one time, my father usually worked on Saturdays, and I'd play all day after cartoons. So he said to me, I don't care where you play in the neighborhood, but I want you here to have something to eat at that, some point during the day. And I said, all right. I did that one time, and that was it. But yeah, I was all over. I mean, my childhood was like the movie Stand By Me. Every day, that I was, especially in the summertime, but every day that I didn't have school, I'd go out in the front there, and you'd bump into somebody. So many kids in my neighborhood, and I knew pretty much all of them. So then we'd play, and then the next day, the same thing would happen. But like I said, I was not a, sleep-in guy back then. Even now, I mean, I'd have to be very tired to catch up on some sleep, where you go, okay, I'll get up at 9 today. But generally, if I've slept normally, which, really lately I haven't been, but, if I have enough sleep in my system, I tend to get up normal time. I don't like to just, sleep. I'm not like out partying or something. I don't do that. But, yeah, in those days, 7 o'clock, I was up. So, yeah, I miss those. I think, I miss those jumping days. But I think now if I jumped, I think my hands would get loose or something, and I'd fall right over the top. I'd be like boom and then boom. It's 1 year ago. Look at that. It's fantastic detail. See that? Look at that. It's a good looking bike. Anyway, almost a year ago, be a year next week, that me, my bride, my kids, we went to Idaho for the 50th anniversary of the Snake River Canyon jump that Evel Knievel attempted back in 1974. Yeah, you gotta keep in mind that Evel Knievel, for people that were my age, was a hero. He was a hero. I mean, everybody wanted to be like him. The reason I was jumping the bike, it was not because of Arthur Fonzarelli. It was because of Evel Knievel. It was a big deal back then. The whole neighborhood was full of kids, but when Evel Knievel would jump, the neighborhood would empty out. It was like a ghost town. Everybody would go home to watch Evel Knievel jump on Wide World of Sports, ABC's Wide World of Sports, and then we'd come back out and discuss it. I was always nervous for him. I felt like I was there getting ready to jump. And my father would, he'd be at the kitchen table, eating the spaghetti there, and he would say, this guy's crazy. Because my father rode a motorcycle, and he knew the energy it took to clear like 150 feet. Because that's what Evel would jump. Now they jump like 300, but the bikes are lighter, the suspension is better. It's a whole different ball game now. When he was doing it, he was jumping, with a bike that once it hit the ground, it would recoil and throw you off of it. And it was a heavy bike. So, but yeah, he was just amazing. So yeah, I got to meet his son. I know in my head I always think it was his brother. It wasn't. It was Kelly Knievel, and that was his son. Got to meet him where he gave me a jump start. Really nice guy. And we talked a bit, and yeah, I was amazed. We stayed at the same hotel as they did. And when we got there, I look out, and Evel Knievel's motorcycle, the fancy one, was out there, just sitting there in the open. I'm thinking in my head, aren't these people like afraid some nut's gonna come by and spray paint it or something, or hit it with a hammer? But it was out there all night. I got out there at night. We went to eat, and when I came back, it was there. Took some pictures. The next day, we went to the event, and I got to meet him, and he didn't realize how big that moment was to me. Huge moment. And then I met another guy. I actually went to the ramp where the jump was, and it was just me, him, and I guess it was his kid or his grandkid, I don't know. And he was, I was up there, he came up, and we started talking about the jump and the old days, all the old stuff. And then he said to me, I was actually here in '74, and he showed me a picture of, back then how it was. And then he said to me, what, he goes, tomorrow I'm going to be at the event there, and I want to bring my album, and I want to show Kelly Knievel and anybody else the pictures. and he was there. I didn't get to talk to him though. At one point, he was further up from me coming my way, and I crossed, not noticing him, and then I think he felt like I was trying to avoid him. I was not. The only reason I noticed it after is because I was shooting video of me crossing, and in the video I saw him in the video like right up ahead, and probably he saw me and he said, "Oh, that's the guy I talked to yesterday. It looks like he's trying to avoid me." I was not. Believe me, I would, you know, I would have loved to have seen that album. Even now, if you see this video, post something, and maybe someday down the line I could see that, or you can make a copy. I'd love to see those pictures. Not every picture, but you know, a couple. I'd love to see every picture. I just don't want you making copies of every picture. But yeah, I looked at him and I go, he's older, I'm older. Where'd all the time go? You know, I mean, he said he was little back then. I go, yeah, I was little, very little back then. I was like that big. But yeah, there's a few, you know, like things throughout your life that represent that time period. Saturday morning cartoons when I was a kid represent my childhood. Hanging out at the railroad tracks. Just mentioned Evel Knievel definitely was a huge part. When I think of Evel Knievel, it represents my childhood. The Muhammad Ali fights growing up, that was a big deal. You know, my father and I would watch those fights. Going to Maine, big deal when I was a kid. You know, that's a big representation of my childhood. So yeah, I wish that I had met Evel Knievel, but it was pretty close meeting the son. Pretty close. I actually got to see Robbie Knievel do his last real jump. I saw the distance, and I was thinking in my head, you know what? I feel like I can do that. I feel like I could do that, especially in my prime. I feel like, you know, I could do that. It just doesn't, you know, when you're looking at it, it does not seem that far. You know, but one wrong, you know, off by a half a degree or something, and you end up in the bushes. Anyway, .2, not much. It's brief, but nice. Tomorrow, Saturday. All right, that's it for now. Ciao.